Hey everyone, it's Lisa Stenz from Lisa's Creative Corner. Today I am super excited to share with you this fun Easter pop-up box card that's part of this month's collaboration with the creative design team, where we'll be showing you all kinds of Easter projects. I'm going to start off by showing you how to make the base of this box card. I created a Cricut design space file that I'm going to put a link down below for you so that you can create one of these cards as well. I made my card base out of a piece of white daisy cardstock, and I'm just folding it on the score lines here, and you'll notice that there's one side that stays flat and the rest of the sides fold down. And then you're going to go ahead and place some adhesive on that little flap to close up the box portion of this card. Once you've adhered the box so that it's closed, just fold it both ways and press down on those score lines to just make those folds nice and crisp. You'll see you can fold the box flat either direction. You can fold it to the right or you can fold it to the left. If you have a bone folder, you can use that to crease those edges just to make them nice and crisp. Next, I cut some pieces of cardstock to decorate the different panels on the cards. And I used the design space file that I created to cut the scallop rectangles and scallop squares out of some peach cardstock. And then the mats are from a piece of Peacock cardstock. And then the pattern paper on top is from the beautiful Daisy Meadows patterned paper in the March-April catalog. You'll notice that there's 4 rectangles, but there's only 3 squares. And you'll see in a minute why. Before we start attaching these panels, you're going to want to make sure your box is lined up properly with the front facing you and the back to the back. And so you want to check to make sure that the side that does not have the score line is placed flat on your workstation. And then you're going to add some adhesive to the back of one of the rectangle mats that we created and add that to the inside back of the box. And then you can go ahead and add adhesive to the other 3 rectangles and add them around the front and sides of the box. And the easiest way to do that is to flatten the box and then use the score lines as your guide to center those matted pieces. I'm just using some Bonding Memories glue to adhere these pieces, but you can use any glue that you have on hand as long as it's a nice and strong adhesive. Once you have all of your rectangle panels adhered, you're going to go ahead and adhere the square pieces. Now you want to make sure that you fold down those flaps before you adhere those squares because you want to have them on the top. You don't want to put them underneath. If you wanted to, you could add them underneath and then add another decorative panel on top, but that's just going to make your card thicker, and when you fold it down flat, it's going to make it a little bit harder to fit in the envelope. When I add sentiments to these box cards, I like to do it on that front panel. So I chose the sentiment from this Happy Easter Bunny stamp set that just says Happy Easter because it's nice and small. And I'm stamping it on this little piece of white daisy cardstock in some charcoal ink. After I stamp it, I'm going to mat it on a piece of peach cardstock that's just a little bit bigger than this white daisy cardstock. And you don't have to worry about all the measurements because everything is in that design space file that's linked down below. And now I'm going to go ahead and adhere it right to that front panel with a little bit of adhesive. You might have noticed that I used this rub and remove eraser a few times, and this thing is great if you have any little extra adhesive that you want to remove from your project. It's a must-have for any crafter, so I'm going to go ahead and put a link down below for that as well. Now we're going to build the little shelves on the inside of this box. And there's 3 pieces that are also in that design space file. And 2 of these strips you're going to fold the same direction on the ends, and the other one you're going to do like a Z fold. So this first shelf that we're going to put on the inside, you're going to add adhesive to those outside little flaps, and you're going to press it all the way against the back of that box on the inside. So you can see I'm lining up those 2 outside flaps perfectly to the top, and then you're going to fold the card one way and fold it the other way and press down, and that will adhere those little flaps to the inside of the card. You're going to do the same thing in the front of the card. So I added adhesive to those 2 outside panels, pushed it up to the front of the card on the inside, folded it ways to press down and have it adhered nicely. And then this Z fold is going to go in the middle. So you're going to add adhesive to those outside little flaps and then line it up right in the middle. And it'll fit perfectly if those front and back shelves are inserted properly. And then you can see I'm just lining it up top and bottom there and on the sides, and again fold it both ways, press down, and then it should adhere nicely. And then you have your 3 shelves where you can start building the inside pieces that are going to pop up. So I'm going to be using a few different images for the inside pop-ups. And one of them is this Daisy Meadows scrapbooking stamp set that has thin cuts that coordinate with it. And I'm going to be stamping a bunch of images with some intense black ink because I'm going to be coloring them in. And the intense black ink doesn't bleed. And I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to do, so I'm just going to be stamping a bunch of different images. And I'll color in a bunch of them, and I ended up only using a few. I didn't use all of the ones that I stamped and colored in, but now I have some for a future project. I chose 3 different Tri-Blemd markers to use to color in these images that I felt matched the colors on the pattern paper. And I used the gold yellow blend, the vintage blue blend, and the coral blend to color in these images. If you've watched any of my videos in the past, you probably know that these markers are my absolute favorite. Each marker has 3 different shades of the same color in the same marker. So the blending is just made so easily because you have all of the shades already chosen for you. And it takes all of the guesswork out of it. So you just have 3 colors with each of these markers that work perfectly together, and they blend perfectly together. And I love them. I have the whole collection. So I went ahead and used these same 3 colors for all of these images because I figured that they would all go together and they would all match the pattern paper. And once I finished coloring in all of the images, I went ahead and die cut them out using the thin cuts dies that coordinate with the stamp set. And I adhered some of them to these long, thin rectangles that I die cut also from the design space file that I created. And they almost look like little popsicle sticks or little lollipops to me. But those little rectangles are going to be helpful when you try to adhere them on the inside of your box card. I also included some of the images from the Daisy Meadows mini Cricut collection in the design space file because I wanted to add some die cuts that are just straight cardstock that weren't images that were stamped and colored in. And the Daisy Meadows mini Cricut collection has so many great images on it. It's got these cute little leaves that you can see that layer on top of each other. It's got beautiful flowers that I also die cut and layered on top of each other, and it's got a cute little Easter bunny, and it's got an entire scrapbook layout, and it's just a great mini collection. So I included a couple of these leaves and flowers that I'm going to add to my card. I decided that I wanted to add a stamped flower to my sentiment panel. So I took this flower that I stamped in canary ink, and I was trying to decide which of the leaves I wanted to add. I had stamped a couple of them in Peacock ink, and then I stamped a couple in glacier ink, and so I decided that the glacier ink leaves looked a little bit better. So I went ahead and added that to the corner of my sentiment panel, and then I got to start on the inside with the pop-ups. I really love this little bunny that's on the sticker sheet in the Daisy Meadows paper packet, and I knew I wanted to use it somewhere. So I thought, should I use it in the back? Should I use it in the front? And I decided to use it in the front. So I wanted to take the stickiness off so that when I folded the card, the part that was sticking up the top wouldn't stick and hold my card together. So I used the anti-static pouch to remove the stickiness. And then I added a little bit of adhesive to the bottom to just adhere it just onto the edge. And I realized pretty quickly that that wasn't going to hold up, so I needed to have something to stabilize it. So I used a couple of those strips that I had cut from the cardstock earlier and added them to the back of the little bunny one on each side to kind of stabilize just underneath the ears, and that really helped. It helped to hold it in place so it didn't flop over. So I added some more adhesive to those little strips, and I tucked in the front of his little paws right in the front, so it looks like he's hanging over the front of the card. It's just perfect. It's the perfect size for the card, and it's just a perfect little image to add. So once I had them in there nice and tight, I wanted to fold the card to one side just to make sure that there was nothing hanging over, especially those ears. Those ears were a little bit long, and I was afraid that they were going to hang over on top of the card, and they actually fit perfectly. So it was a good thing I didn't put them in the back of the card because his ears might have been too tall. So now I'm going to go ahead and add some of these flowers and leaves to the inside of this card. And what you want to do, you kind of want to work forward to backwards, and you want to have all of the images in the front a little bit lower and then the images in the back a little bit higher. So I started in the front, and then I actually, instead of moving from the front to the back like I normally do with these cards, I went to the back and added some of the taller items in the back, and then kind of filled in the middle with some more images that were kind of halfway in between the lower ones in the front and the higher ones in the back. And you kind of have to fiddle with it. Each time you add one of the images, you want to go ahead and fold down the card to make sure that nothing is hanging over, because if you have images hanging over on the top or the sides of the card, then it's not going to fit in your envelope. So if I fold it this way, you see how that's hanging on the left side? That's okay, because if I fold it to the right, nothing is hanging over. So you want to figure out which way you're going to fold your card to put in the envelope, and then just make sure nothing's hanging over on that opposite side. So see here, I have those little flowers that are hanging to the right, so that one's not going to work. So I need to find an image on that right side that's not going to hang over, so when I fold it and put it inside the card or inside the envelope, then it will fit perfectly. I really love this butterfly, and I tried to adhere it to the back, and it just was a little bit too big, so I had to add another one of those strips to balance it out because it was so heavy. So you can see here I'm just lining it up so that it doesn't hang over too much on the left side when the card is closed. Now I'm just going to go ahead and fill in the empty spaces with some of these different images. Again, making sure that each time I add one, that when I fold it, it's not going to hang over. And some of them are a little bit too tall, but some of them you just kind of have to fiddle. I had one in the back that I ended up moving to the front, and then I had one in the front that I ended up moving to the back. But it's a little bit of a process, but it's really fun, and there's really no right or wrong way to do it. You just, again, want to make sure that nothing's hanging over. Some of the smaller leaves and the smaller stems, you don't have to add to those little strips. You can just adhere them directly to the flowers and the images that are already glued inside. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm just adding a little bit more detail by adding some of these little leaves and some of these little stems directly to the back of the flowers so that they can pop up, but they're so small that they don't really need the long strips. And again, each time you add something, just fold the card just to make sure that nothing's sticking out over the top or the edge. Once I was done with all of the inside pieces, I decided I wanted to add a few of these little bitty sparkles to the outside of the card on this little flower. And one little tip is to use the piercing tool to hold these little bitty sparkles because it makes it much easier. And now that the card is finished, it folds nicely and fits inside of an envelope perfectly, and when the recipient opens it, they can pop it up and enjoy it. Here's a few still shots from up above and from the side. And here's a couple of cards that I made using the simple floral stamp set and the Happiness Lives Here mini Cricut collection. I'll add a supply list for these cards as well down below. I hope you enjoyed this video and that inspires you to make some pop-up box cards yourself. Don't forget to check out all of the other design team members' videos. You'll be sure to get some great inspiration for some Easter projects. I have links down below to each of their videos and their YouTube channels. And stop by tomorrow to see what Andrea's got for us. I can't wait. It's going to be amazing. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.